There's no real rules to whatever you want to talk about.
So should I just step out? All right, Sully, who's the most unique player you've coached?
I think it would have to be Crosby. I think just based on watching him on a daily basis, I've gained such an appreciation for how good he is. But it's not by accident. He's probably the most driven athlete I've ever been around, and his work ethic and his appetite to be the best is unique. And I think when you look at a lot of the elite players that we've all coached over the years, I think that's one of the things that separates him from others.
Let me ask you a question with him. So when he comes back to the bench, and I've had this with certain players, we haven't had it lots in Detroit, but when they come back to the bench and they're pissed, they wanted the puck delivered wherever it was and whatnot. How much of that's healthy? When do you step in?
I think it's healthy personally. I like a bench with personality, and we call it a man's argument on our team. And so if guys are going to come back, I think that's an important aspect of coming together as a team and working together. If you want the puck, you got to let the guy know. There is a point in time where if it lingers or the players don't move by it, then I might step in and say, enough, go play. But it's certainly something that we encourage on our bench, and we have a fair amount of it because you can imagine we've got some alpha males.
Yeah.
I mean, with all the success you guys have had, I'm sure all these guys have strong opinions, and
they do.
A lot of these guys have had a lot of success.
Yeah, they do.
That's it's been interesting. Like, I've had the chance to coach the World Championship team the last 3 years, and now it's interesting for me to see some of the highest end players, and I love it. I love the competitiveness, and we haven't had lots of that in Detroit for whatever reason, where they're kind of on each other. And I've had players come from other teams come back and say, "Why don't we get on each other more? Why don't we get on each other?" My only thing to them is, don't just come back and bitch. If you have something, say it to them. Right. And don't say it to him.
Right. Well, there's a way to get on each other too. It can't be confrontational. It can't be derogatory. You bring up Sidney Crosby, and probably the most unique player I've coached is Jack Eichel. Now he's 21 years old, and a lot of the things that I hear about Jack and his growth over the last 3 years, people draw a lot of analogies to Sidney Crosby. I'm sure you've seen Sidney grow in your time, even while you've been in Pittsburgh. But you talk to people that know Sid earlier. He's really come a long way in the last 7 or 8 years of his career.
Yeah, I'm sure he has.
All the pressure these guys face. The Crosbys, the Eichels, when they get in the league. There's an awful lot of burden for these guys.
Yeah.
And, sometimes people lose sight of the fact that these guys are 18, 19 years old when they get in the league, and just because they're great players initially, they lose sight of their age.
Right.
They've got the same problems as every 18 or 19-year-old.
Right.
Just because they're great players doesn't mean they don't have those challenges.
Right.
And one of the things that I know with Jack, I know he's made some progress over the last few years of being what he's capable of being, not only just a great player, but there's a lot more that goes into being the great player other than what you're doing on the ice.
It's the maturation of the player.
Yeah.
That's what I think. And you go through experiences, and we've all had successes, we've all had failures, and in Pittsburgh we've had our fair share of both. And a lot of times you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. But one of the things that I've observed with Sid is he's a pretty intuitive guy in the sense that when we do have the man's argument, he knows the guys that he can go at, and he knows the guys that he has to be supportive of. He's terrific with our young players, but him and Tanger have some doozies.
That would be for me one of the big, like, when it's on a young player, when they can handle. Like, I think I saw one of our young defensemen this year on the power play stop shooting the puck. He stopped shooting the puck because he kept getting bitched at about the shot being. Well, next thing you know, his best attribute is taken away. And I've had, and then you have the conversation, like, you gotta relax in that. I would say for me, the most probably unique player I've coached is Thomas Vanek, just because of how smart he is. How smart of he's by far for me the most intelligent hockey player that I've coached. He's getting up there in age, doesn't skate great, but man, so every situation he comes back with, it's to hear his point of view is always interesting for me as a coach. Whether it's stuff that we do, And it's always well intentioned, in my opinion. It's not. It's about trying to get to the best answer. It's about trying to create the best opportunity to win. It's not about him being right or him saying, "Well, you guys got to do things better" or whatnot. It was, I'll give you an example. Like we roll the goalies film before the game and on shootouts or weaknesses and all that stuff. And before the game, we might talk about a certain number of face-off plays. And we're sitting in New York one morning having breakfast, and he says to me, "Blash, how come we go over face-offs before the game, but we never see them prior to that? Like you roll all this other stuff. Why aren't you rolling, the other team's face-off plays and that?" And I was like, "It's great, And so now we do that. But it's an unreal growth experience, I think, as a coach, to coach players that are like that.
Right.
I think the players in our league know who the other best players are, and they know what they're about.
Yeah,
I don't think I don't think it takes a lot of coaching to say, hey, Crosby's going to do this, or so and so wants to cut to the middle, or whatnot. I think it's more the guys that are new to the league and maybe surprisingly fast or surprisingly just those kind of tidbits.
McDavid jumps out at me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's a better player than Sid, but just from a pure physical standpoint.
Yeah,
McKinnon's another. Those are the two guys that would jump out at me, McKinnon and McDavid.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are so physically strong and big and fast that you could do everything right and still lose a one-on-one battle or still pay a price.
Right.
Because those guys are just so
you
gifted.
don't have an answer for them.
You just can't.
So
the good Lord bless them more than everybody else.
Yeah. How much are you focusing on them when you go to play those teams? Like, how much are you showing to them? Like, I always kind of weigh, the one game we showed McDavid and we showed this and
you don't want to scare them.
Yeah.
They know.
That would be the question I'd have,
Yeah, I think part of it has to do with your personnel too, the type of team that you have. Like we spend a lot of time on our team because we're trying to dictate the terms. We're not trying to be reactive. We're trying to be proactive. So we spend way more time showing our stuff and trying to get better at what we do. That's not to say that we don't show tendencies. Hey, here's McDavid. He likes to do this, right? But we do that. But it's not to the point of. It's not to the point where we have concern that, hey, we're scaring these guys into this, or because sometimes if you show so much of one player or even one team, and you pump the other team's tires, that hey, they're this team's really good, we better be ready type thing, right? You can talk your team into hey, they're better than us, right? And so you got to make sure you don't talk your team into that.
Well, it's interesting too because we haven't been a playoff team the last couple of years, and I think sometimes we have to fight the inferiority complex of that. And so if we're pumping they're like, what about us? What about us? So we got to on the other.
It's a great rallying cry.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. It can be a great rallying cry for sure.
I think it's a hard league. It's a competitive league in all of its forms. I don't care what aspect of the business you're in, whether you're a general manager, you're a coach, you're a scout, you're a player. It's a competitive league, and when you're a head coach in this league, number one, there's only 31 of them, and so because of the finite amount of positions, they're difficult jobs to get, And my experience is that there's so many good coaches that are out there. I have so much respect for how hard coaches work in today's game, how prepared and thorough every team is, and we all know how we rely on our assistant coaches to help us in that capacity. So I have so much respect for how many real good coaches that are in the game today. And some of them, quite honestly, are deserving of more opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so that I think is the most frustrating part of the game. I fast-tracked to being a head coach in the league, and then I was an assistant coach for a decade. And fortunately I went back to the American League, and I got an opportunity again to be a head coach in Pittsburgh, and it's worked out. But there's no guarantees.
Well, we've taken similar paths to the NHL, where you, like you just alluded to, you took a different path. And I think one of the things that guys, when you start coaching pro hockey, you have to overcome the fact that you're coaching pros in the NHL. I don't care how confident you are, that can be intimidating. And actually, my first experience coaching NHL players when we went over to the World Championships, and I'll never forget, get up on the front of the board. Here I am, 37 years old, coaching NHL guys for the first time. And I remember drawing the first drill. There was a little bit of a knot in my stomach. But halfway through it, I realized to myself, he's 23, he's 25. I lost that immediately, and then there was a comfort level. You know what I mean? I don't know if you went through that.
Well, for sure.
It's a hurdle that you have to overcome, but you realize they're players. They want to learn. They want to get better. I don't care how old they are. I don't care how much success they've had. They all want to get better.
Yeah, it's a hurdle you have to overcome, especially if you don't have NHL pedigree. You know, and I didn't have NHL pedigree, and I came in as an assistant. That was a big eye opener for sure. Went back as American League head coach, came back to coach a lot of the same players, but there's definitely that hurdle of getting over that. At the end of the day, they're hockey players and they're people no different than you've coached when I was in college and junior all the way up. And to your point too, some of it's age. You know, like as you get older, they keep getting younger too. You know, and I think some of it's that, and it becomes a different kind of approach. But the biggest thing I find is they want to be coached. They want to be held accountable. They want to be pushed. Those are all unanimous, no matter what level you coach at. There's unique challenges for sure, but no matter. Now, I find the NHL to be the biggest second-guessing league in the world in a sense of your players, just there's more people around you, and they're all great hockey people, and they all care a ton.
Right.
And you got to learn to be okay with that. You got to be learned that you're going to get second-guessed, and that's okay. And sometimes you're going to be wrong. That's okay too, and you just keep moving on.
That's the biggest difference from our path. I mean, like you just talked about. I mean, you coach college or junior hockey or whatever. I mean, the game ends and it's you and your assistants. Well, as we all know, in the NHL, you got GMs, assistant GMs, presidents. I mean, there's an awful lot of opinions.
Yeah, social media GMs.
Social media GMs, reporting GMs.
I got off that quick.
And we probably coach the most subjective game in the world. When you really think about it, right? I mean, there's an awful lot of subjectivity to our game. So we're in a profession which you're getting second guess constantly, and you've got to be, respectfully disagree with people, and you've got to be strong in your convictions. But you also have to be open-minded enough to listen to people.
Yes.
Right? You've got to understand
that's
that
an
you're
important
not right
aspect.
all the time.
That's the balance, isn't it?
That is
the
a
balance
balance.
between being strong in your convictions and not, and you and I've talked about this last year maybe, not searching for answers if they're not there. Like sometimes the difference is like this, and you just got to keep doing what you're doing.
You got to be careful you don't overthink it.
For sure.
No
And I've
question.
been guilty of that in Detroit. When you don't win enough games, all of a sudden you're trying to search for other ways to win.
Everything goes under the microscope.
Yeah, and you're just your own self. So I was on Twitter my first year in Detroit, and I thought it would give me an advantage. I'd go into the media scrums. I'd kind of know what was going on, what questions I was going to be asked, and you just get beat down. So now we're at the end of the year, and I'm watching Pittsburgh play somebody in the playoffs. I'm having a beer, just hanging out by myself, watching the game, and I get a direct tweet to me. See at Jeff Blashill, Pittsburgh plays their young players. How come you don't play your young players? I deleted Twitter. My Twitter account the next day. That was enough.
Hey, like our college coach used to say all the time, Jack Parker, he'd say it's easy to coach somebody else's team.
Yes.
And that's the truth.
That is
Well, you don't have to live with the consequences. It's easy to sit there and say we should have done this.
It's a hard job.
It sure is.
Every team's trying to win.
Absolutely.
The other teams are trying to win too. And there's such a fine line between winning and losing. The parity in the league, I think, is greater now than it's ever been. And so all you can do is you believe a certain way, you have a philosophy, you stick to your convictions, you stay true to your values, and you listen to the people around you that you trust. But eventually, ultimately, as the head coach, it's your job to make the decision. You make it and go with it.
And be okay if you whatever
right.
the consequences. That's a big learning thing for sure.
You might make, this may sound ironic, but you might make the right decision. It might not work out that one time. This is a game of percentages, right? You can't let the failure of a decision affect what you're going to do moving forward. It might have been the right thing to do, but it didn't work out. I mean, you've got to.
It's like
it's the same thing with trades. Jim and I talk about it all the time. Like sometimes you think a certain guy is going to fit. But it's an inexact science. You can't predict chemistry sometimes, right? You don't know how that trade's going to impact that player when he comes in. Like I'll give you an example with our team. When we trade for guys, we've got an intimidating dressing room for obvious reasons, right? So, and number one, there's an expectation that we're supposed to win, but then we've got some star power and some stature in there it can be an intimidating room to walk into. I've had guys that have been in the league, veteran guys that play for other teams, that when they come in, it's like, there's a little bit of intimidation. It goes away fast. It goes away fast, right? But even with trades, something that on paper might look really good, but for whatever reason it didn't fit at your team at your time, a particular time. And so it's easy to second guess those things. The objective was right, the idea was right, the thought process was right, the due diligence was right, right? So everything in the process was right. But we're in a business where when you're dealing with human nature is hard to predict sometimes.
Yeah, sure is. And that's also the game. I mean, you come down to goalies. You can outchance a team, 15-8 and lose the game. Well, you start looking at, well, what did we do wrong? What did we? Well, you might have done nothing wrong. You do that 10 times, you're going to win it 9 times.
Right.
And I think that's a huge factor.
Huge piece of coaching, recognizing when you play well, and obviously we're such a result-driven business, but it's, getting results over the long haul, not in that short term. And that's, you just got to keep chipping away at it and having enough conviction in what you're doing. That if you keep doing the right things, you're going to get rewarded for it.
Our beat reporters told me they had a game there. Whenever I say process, they do a drink or they do a shot. So but it's the reality of it. Like it's the reality. It's and it's funny because I think sometimes fan bases, sometimes managers, they don't want to hear the process, or they don't want to hear it because it is so result. But it's
But at the end of the day, and I tell this to our players all the time, all you can do is control the controllables.
For sure.
The rest of it, you can't. Right? So focus on that. And that's where it lies.
And success.
And as a
always
coach,
follows
it's essential
good
to keep your eye on that ball.
You have to.
Sure. And you've got to make sure your players keep your eye on that ball.
I just think that this day and age, it's such a relationship-driven profession. I mean, obviously we're trying to get our players to buy in what we're coaching, and I mean, when the player knows you care about them, a trust factor kicks in, and I think that's when you can really make the most impact, not only with your team and collectively, but also from an individual standpoint.
For sure.
And that's something you have to work on daily. It can't be a once every 2-week thing.
They want to know that you care before they know what you know.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Before I'm 52-year-old David Quinn, the hockey coach, I'm 52-year-old David Quinn, the human being. Before, Mika Zibanejad's a 25-year-old center for the New York Rangers. He's a 25-year-old human being. And sometimes that gets lost in all of this, right? For sure. I mean, that's the foundation of giving yourself a chance to be successful with the individuals and with your team collectively. You've got to have it. You have to have it.
I try to be, one of the compliments or things I heard a player say that I took it as a big compliment, I think when I was moving from one job to the next, is he's fair but hard. And for me, that's the biggest thing I want to be. I want to be fair, but I want to make sure, as we said earlier, they want to be held accountable. They need to be pushed, but are you fair in the way that you approach it? And try to stay as far away from demeaning, sarcasm. Those things to me always lose the message. Like if I say I want to be direct. Well, if you're going to be direct, the whole idea is that they get the point of what you're saying. And the minute you get too demeaning or too sarcastic, all of a sudden they stop listening to that. They just think.
The discussion I have with our guys sometimes is, and I think I'm very much like you guys, is I gave them my word when I took the team over that I was going to be honest with them.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to push anything under the rug. We want to see things for what they are because it's the only way we can solve challenges and make progress. And so when we play well, I'll be the first guy to pat you on the back. When we don't play well, we need to assess why in order to get better. And every team goes through their struggles or the challenges that the league presents. And I've had conversations with our players, a lot of them one-on-one, where they'd say to me, well, I think we got to be a little bit more positive. I'd say, okay. I said, I hear you, but I said, let me ask you a question. Do you want me to be honest with you, or do you want me to be positive with you? Don't confuse honesty with negativity. I'm not saying it's sarcasm. I'm not saying it's demeaning or humiliation, but if what's going on here isn't positive, what do I do? Get out my pom-poms and blow smoke? Or do I tell you the truth? Right? So I have that conversation with our guys a lot. It's like, okay, which do you want? You tell me which one you want. You want honesty? I'll give you honesty.
Well, everybody wants honesty until they're honest.
And everybody wants to be.
That's the reality.
Right? Accountability is a great word in the summertime. Everybody loves it. But accountability essentially, inevitably, always involves some form of conflict.
Exactly.
Right? It just does. It's not warm and fuzzy.
But going back to what we were talking about earlier, those, holding people accountable and having those difficult conversations become easier, and they're not easy. They become easier when you continue to build those relationships. If those aren't the only conversations you're having with them, then they're going to be more accepted.
Yes.
Whereas if You know, you come out of left field and have these hard conversations and are holding people accountable, they're less apt to accept it.
Yeah, yeah.